Welcome in, everybody. It is Pro Basketball Today here on SportsGrid, joining you for the first time since the New York Knicks were crowned NBA champions. I'm Kevin Walsh. I am with, of course, Coach James Young. JY, does it feel real, man?
Caleb, it does not feel real. It doesn't feel real. It probably didn't feel real for me until Thursday, going to the parade. But, shout out to the Knicks and their entire organization. I will be giving apologies out to certain people throughout the show about what gone on. But, there's also the other side of it that we'll get into in this hour, and that's San Antonio. What went wrong for this team, and where does this team go in the future?
Well, 100%. There are two sides to this coin, but the New York Knicks finishing this series out in 5, and they won this series in a completely different fashion to a lot of the Eastern Conference victories, which were dominant blowouts. The Knicks got back to their roots a little bit in a close game specialist, comeback capable group, and we can get to the series overall, but Coach, Game 5, another early San Antonio double-digit lead, a 10-point lead at the end of the opening quarter. The Knicks only scored 13 points in the first quarter, while Brunson scores just under 50% of the Knicks' points in Game 5, with 45 in the closeout. Take me back to Game 5 and how you felt watching the Knicks finish this thing off.
I think the Knicks had a recipe, folks, and that was literally, if you're old enough to remember Muhammad Ali boxing, I called it the rope-a-dope, where he did with George Foreman, which is put himself on the ropes and let San Antonio punch themselves out. And I just think that's what New York did. The only difference is the Knicks made their run a little bit earlier, in that second quarter, getting at the single digits. Yeah, got back to double digits again. But it just seemed like as the game got more going, especially in the third, fourth quarter, the Knicks felt more comfortable down the stretch of the game. I think, number one, they had the best closer in the NBA in Jalen Brunson. His ability to create shots and really do whatever he wanted. It didn't matter if it was Castle, if it was Vassell, if it was Fox, if it was Wemby on a switch. He just kind of went to work. So, for them, I think they deserve a lot of credit for weathering the storm. And a lot of times, Kevin, over the last week, I've tried to identify why I felt like New York was able to do this. It's experience. And it's not just experience in regards to age. It's having, 3 guys in Villanova guys that won a combined 5 national championships, a cat that went deep into the tournament. They had guys that went to college for longer periods of time. So what happened was when they got in the moment, Kevin, they never panicked. San Antonio panicked, but it seemed like San Antonio did so much punching early on in the game that they had very little left. And then Mitch Johnson, let's be honest, folks, he did them no favors in the way he coached this team throughout this series.
I thought Mitch Johnson was terrible. And I think Mitch Johnson ends up, and this doesn't happen all the time, and it's why the Spurs run is so unique. He also has little to no experience, right? We would talk about the youth primarily through the lens of Wemby and Castle and Harper, but it applied to Mitch Johnson as well, and I thought it applied to Mitch Johnson in this series. I think for me, though, in Game 5, JY, what stands out so much is that there wasn't a single moment where it was like, oh, the Spurs have closed it, right? That's of course enforced with the Game 4 comeback down 29. But again, the Knicks have been doing this, as we talked about last time. These leads are not new to San Antonio, and they're not scary to New York. And offensively, it was a San Antonio team that just did not have answers once again down the stretch. And a lot of people have placed that at Victor Wembanyama's feet. I get it. right? If we're calling him the best player in the world, you have to be a part of that solution. And I think that is totally fair. I think a 1 of 6 or a 1 of 10 performance from Stephon Castle is stomach turning. Man, I'm not going to. De'Aaron Fox, a former clutch player of the year, supposed to be the veteran 3 for 15. I mean, guys, it can't happen. It just can't happen. So I listen, man, I've seen it with LeBron. Heavy is the head who wears the crown. And that's where a lot of people are going to start things off here. But, Coach, I saw a lot of people leaving Game 5 with, kind of daggers pointed at Victor Wembanyama. I think those are a bit unfair because I also thought defensively he was still really good in this game. I mean, he was out of this world in the opening quarter and really the opening half. But how much blame do you put on Victor Wembanyama for the Spurs not winning Game 5, not winning the series?
I mean, listen, he's going to get blamed because of missed free throws, the walk down, really. I mean, listen, the move that Jalen Brunson put on him down by 8, when he got into him, kind of shuffle dribble, kind of knocked him off his line and got to his right hand. No one's stopping that move. So listen, does Victor get some of the blame? Yes, of course. But I just think people have to look at the entire finals of De'Aaron Fox, 5 of 19 from the floor, 3 of 12 from 3. I'm going to repeat myself. 5 of 19 from the floor, 3 of 12 from 3. Kevin and I came on this exact same show and said, you can't play this guy late. You can't play him late. What did Mitch Johnson do? Played him late. Now, listen, I guess to Mitch Johnson's, credit or detriment, Stephon Castle had his worst game of the series. Worst game of the series. Only basket he made was that putback dunk in the last 20 seconds. But De'Aaron Fox, it's like when De'Aaron Fox was getting into his shot, Kevin, game 1, game 2, I'm like, oh, man, he may make this. By the time it was game off, I'm like, game 5, I said, all right, who's getting the rebound? The shot was going up, and I'm saying as a coach, all right, who's getting the rebound? Because you could see that he wasn't there. And I think that's the growth that we need to see from San Antonio. I'll tell you right now, another person that seems to be escaping this is, where was Keldon Johnson this entire series? The sixth man of the year was terrible in this series. So they have to have guys that stepped up. That's the difference between New York and San Antonio. Okay? Wembanyama wasn't as good as Brunson. But if you go through the series, third best player in the series, OG Anunoby. Fourth best player in the series, or getting into foul trouble, Karl Anthony Towns, right? So right now, if you got 3 of the 4 best players in the series being the Knicks, right? And then you have other guys making contributions, it's tough to overcome that. So San Antonio's got a lot to learn. I also think San Antonio spent a lot of time disrespecting the Knicks. Josh Hart went on his roommate show last night, made an interesting point. And I thought this too. The way they celebrated beating the Thunder was almost like they thought they had it in the bag. And they thought they still had it in the bag after Game 4. I think immaturity and inexperience caught up to the Spurs at the wrong time.
That Thunder point is one that I made as the Spurs were celebrating. Like, this is great for the Knicks. And it's, I don't think it's wrong. I want people to kind of bottle what we just talked about with San Antonio, because Coach and I are, of course, going to look towards next season, and just keep it in the back of your minds, okay? Because I think there's some interesting, 1, decisions for the Spurs, and 2, outlook for the rest of the league. We are running up against a break here. When we come back, we're going to talk about what this title means for the Knicks, how they did it, credit pie, all of these of this championship run, and then get into next year's odds, best player in the world talk, and a look over, of course, at the WNBA, as we always do with you guys right here. It's Kevin Walsh, it's Coach James Young. It is Pro Basketball Today on SportsGrid. the 25-26 New York Knicks are NBA champions. And when a team wins a championship, we start talking legacies, standing within the league, and how you will remember a group. And I have been real annoyed since the Knicks won this title. And it's not that it's everyone to blame, but man, there are a lot of people rewriting history. The story of the Knicks, and Coach, you'll tell me if you disagree, and that's fine if you do. We'll have that conversation. The story of the Knicks is not a one-man band dragging guys across the finish line. The story of the Knicks is they finally unlocked their potential that we all thought they had when they put this team together. Brunson is an all-NBA caliber guard. Cat is an all-NBA caliber big. We knew that. OG Anunoby is an all-star level player. Mikal Bridges is an all-star level player. We knew those things. And yet, 3 games into the playoffs, nobody was carrying their weight. They then made an undeniable, clear as day change to how they operated, and they finally unlocked Karl Anthony Towns and unlocked OG Anunoby and made Mikal Bridges feel more comfortable, all while Brunson continued to get into a rhythm. And that led to a dominant Eastern Conference run, and then a NBA Finals where if you handed out a game MVP at the end of game 1, you would have given it, I believe, to Cat. At the end of game 2, I believe you would have given it to Cat again. At the end of game 4, you certainly would have given it to OG Anunoby. And at the end of game 5, of course, you would have given it to Jalen Brunson. Don't worry, this is not me attempting to make some Karl Anthony Towns Finals MVP case. What it is putting this Knicks team into an appropriate context. This is not the Jalen Brunson story. I'm sorry. It's the New York Knicks story. It's validation for Cat, for OG, for Bridges, for Mike Brown. It is validation. It is not Brunson passing some of the greatest guards in league history just because he's a Finals MVP. We didn't do this with Jaylen Brown. We knew better. And I'm sorry, but we should know better here. When we think about how many of these New York Knicks will have their number retired, it's not Brunson and maybe Cat. It should be the entire starting 5. Because that is how I will remember this team and what they accomplished, Coach.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, Kevin, it was April 25th. I want to rewind people. Kevin and I did a show that day. And part of what we talked about, and we both talked about it, is the ball just became too dominant in Jalen Brunson's hands. And I remember, Kevin, as night as day, we said the ball's got to find a way through Cat, that he's got to be better. And that was the day. You saw it. There was something that was said between Cat, and Cat talked about it recently, that he went to Mike Brown and said, let me be the hub of the offense. Credit to Mike Brown for listening. Tibbs wouldn't have listened. He would have just kept playing the same way. Mike Brown adjusted. You know what? You know who else did? Jalen did. And that's also the same day, if people remember, in the third quarter, the Knicks started to make their run. The ball got a little stagnant, Kevin. If you remember, they came to the sidelines, and Rick Brunson looked at his kid and said, move the bleeping ball. Move the bleeping ball. And that, to me, was what unlocked everything. When Mike Brown got hired for the Knicks, and by the way, shout out to the Sacramento Kings. You guys are a great organization. De'Aaron Fox goes to the finals. Mike Brown wins a championship. You guys are just sinking in quicksand. But I'll tell you this: When they hired Mike, the Knicks, I envisioned that the offense would go through Cat the way that they did with Domantas Sabonis. You did not see that all year until Game 4 of the Eastern Conference quarterfinals. Give it to Cat, whether it's that split screen action where you screen away, back to whatever. Then you saw, or the flex action where you set the flex screen. And if you remember, Kevin, not only did Cat get going, that's when OG got going. And he went on this run. And then remember, Mikal Bridges, I don't think scored in either Game 2 or Game 3 in that series. Then he got unlocked. The Knicks, folks, as great as people say Brunson is, and he is great, they reminded me of the 2004 Pistons. They beat you by the sum of their parts. And everybody had a role. Brunson did, Cat did, OG did, Mikal got going. Josh Hart, 5 3-pointer game number 1 of the finals versus Cleveland. How about Deuce McBride, 7 made 3-pointers in the closeout game versus Philadelphia? How about the 3 threes made by Landry Shamet, obviously in game number 1 against Cleveland? They all shared in their role. And that's what made it special for these old school Knicks fans like my father, who's 83 years old, who talked about the 70s Knicks. You know what? You know what New York Knicks fans around 50 years old and young got sick of hearing? The 70s Knicks. While they passed the ball, they moved the ball, they relied on each other. Well, guess what? New York Knicks found a way that you don't have to have just the one singular superstar or have the 3-headed monster. You have to have a rotation full of guys and a coach ready to adapt game in and game out to get you where they want to go. The Knicks did not win because of Jalen Brunson. The Knicks won because they were the New York Knicks, and they played like a team.
I completely agree. Again, I'm not saying Brunson didn't deserve Finals MVP when it was all said and done. I'm not saying that because he had key moments in Game 1 and Game 4 and obviously Game 5. But when I hear that he is now has an argument for best player in the world, sorry, no, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. And that's okay. But that's bad analysis, okay? And I expect better from all of us. Now, can Brunson do it again? Will the Spurs be back? We'll talk about it here on SportsGrid. All right, guys, back with you here on Pro Basketball Today. And when one season ends, the next one begins. And the sports books have positioned co-favorites mostly for Oklahoma City and San Antonio. Boston is the second option. I'm seeing at plus 550, and then the Knicks are at 8-1. Next closest team is 22-1. So really, this very short set up for four teams, and then kind of everybody else seen as a long shot here. But you could even argue that it's a very, very short setup for OKC and San Antonio. Do you agree, Coach, with where the Thunder and Spurs are priced relative to the rest of the league? And by the way, certainly the rest of the West.
If you think about the youth and what they expect, especially Oklahoma City, who didn't have guys healthy, Mitchell and obviously J-Dub down the stretch of the season. Also with the amount of, especially with Oklahoma City draft capital that they have where they can make a move. We may talk about that when we get to the NBA draft coverage in a little bit. But I do think that they are positioned, correctly in regards to being favorites. Now, I think there's maybe a little bit too much respect given and maybe a little bit too much disrespect given to teams like Minnesota and Denver, who I think are still really good teams. Now, both teams are going to probably make moves. And I think those lines and those odds, Kev, are really going to move based on, what happens in regards to the offseason of both of those teams. When you get to the East, I think that they're discounting the Knicks. I know they look at, Jason Tatum, missing Game 7. But to me, I think the Knicks have to be a shorter number, if not co-favorites with Boston in the Eastern Conference there. But then you have to look at, what's going to go on with a lot of these other teams. Detroit, listen, there's going to be a Jalen Duren question that's going to come out. Jalen Duren was getting the max. Are you sure you want to give him the max after the way he played this last playoff run? What happens with Orlando? Obviously new coach with Sweeney. Do they blow it up? Is Atlanta going to make a move? But CJ McCollum's a free agent. So I think the reason why those teams, at least the top four, are where they are, Kevin, is probably because what they expect those teams to bring back, and maybe they feel that there's less questions. But I still think some of the odds are a little wonky at this point, especially New York should be closer to Boston, and maybe some disrespect for teams like Cleveland, Detroit, and then in the West, Minnesota, and then obviously, others as well.
So I just want to focus in on OKC and San Antonio, because I've had some conversations with people who suggest one or maybe even both of them are inevitable. And I'm not saying I'm not guilty of a comparable feeling, but I would like to peel back a little bit now what we've seen the last two seasons. Firstly, the idea that San Antonio is inevitable, I actually think is really, really wrong. That's why I said bottle up what Coach and I said at the beginning of the show. The only reason people think the Spurs are inevitable is because they are young. Because I do not think the postseason actually told us that they are a plus 250 favorite good. Right? We don't feel great about Fox. Keldon kind of no-showed. Champagny and Vassell are not Bridges and OG, right? The idea is, Wemby will get better, Castle will get better, Harper will get better. Okay. How much better in a season? They're still very, very young. You're talking about year 2 Harper, year 3 Castle, year 4 Wemby. So I don't know why the Spurs, who did just kind of get rolled up by the Knicks, who had a pretty easy path until they played the Thunder, right? To the finals. I don't know why we're doing that. And then on OKC, and I know Coach will love this, because we agree on that. They wouldn't have won the title if Halliburton didn't get hurt. I know I believe that. I know I believe that. Okay? And I know that this year, the Suns-Lakers start to the postseason is irrelevant. So then they played a Spurs team in a 7-game series and lost a home game 7. So I'm not saying those two should be the favorites. But the idea, first of all, only one of them can make the finals. Right? That's first of all. But the idea that they're unbeatable when getting there, I haven't seen that in the 2 years that we've watched these two teams, Coach.
No, I think that's the thing is there's too much given to the Western Conference being a power. Kevin, this has been going on for 50 years or 40 years. The West is so much better than the East. The West is so much better than the East. I know. Look who's won more championships over the last 40 years. The Eastern Conference over the West. So let's pump our brakes with that a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. We are, of course, going to get a little bit into the Giannis, the LeBron, but also we do check in with the WNBA here on Pro Basketball Today, and that's coming up after a quick break on SportsGrid. All right, guys, Pro Basketball Today. We're right back here on SportsGrid. We've got the NBA Draft next week, which, of course, we're going to talk about here. But I do want to just quickly check in with the WNBA, as we often do. And I'd like to bring back a conversation from last week. And I'm going to acknowledge something, and then I have a question. And I don't know, there's a part of me that wonders if I'm going to get annoyed at what JY says, even though he might be right. So I'm really going to be interested how this all lands here. Last week, Coach and I were just talking through some WNBA odds, and he said, hey, if you guys just want to take a look at the MVP market, Olivia Miles could be in the mix. At the time, Coach, was 50 to 1, give or
60
take?
to 1.
This was
60
to 1, and it was last week. She's now 17 to 1. And there are a lot of numbers that pretty much say only Aja Wilson has been better than Olivia Miles this year. So firstly, a credit to you. You couldn't have been more right. At 60 to 1, Olivia Miles was a sensational bet. So 100% credit pie JY. My question to you, though, Coach, what is going on and how is this possible? Because, JY, listen, I understand you were in on Olivia Miles. Am I to believe that Olivia Miles coming into the league and looking like one of the 5 best players immediately? That was what we were expecting here? How is this possible?
I don't know if I was expecting, 5 best players in the WNBA. Kevin, I was expecting one of the 5 best or 4 best point guards in the world. Caitlin Clark, Sabrina Ionescu, Paige Beckers, and then Olivia Miles. And people will be like, wait, come on, Jay, seriously? Listen, there is something to be said about the style of play that she had at TCU. And this is a conversation that I've had with Mark Campbell and I've had with numerous coaches on my Coaches with JY show. Is the thought process of teams are starting to run WNBA-style offenses to get these ladies ready for the league. I saw Olivia Miles with a TCU team, I'll be honest, and I know those guys, they were good shooters, but those were transfers that literally that Mark and Chavi got to play much better. So I envisioned her in the WNBA, and I said, holy smokes, high pick and roll, can shoot the ball, has the best vision of any player in the WNBA, and I'm like, yeah, she's going to have that kind of effect. Now, what I did not imagine is, Natasha Howard turning into Natasha Howard 6-7 years ago. I mean, the way that they're playing is phenomenal. Folks, they're doing this. They have the best record in the league, and Nafisha Collier hasn't played yet. Like, think about that. Nafisha Collier, in my opinion, Kevin, is the second best player in the world behind Asia Wilson. To me, it's Asia, Fish, then Stewie, then probably Caitlin Clark or Paige. That's probably your top 5, right? Mm-hmm. They have the best record in the league. And they've lost players as well. Shepard, McBride, Alana Smith, right? So what I saw out of Olivia was an exceptional. I'm going to say this. I have not seen a kid come into the league with that kind of sight vision and swag as a guard, passing the ball, ready, since Magic Johnson. Caitlin Clark is different because she's like logo threes, but she passes the ball. Like Magic came and just dropping dimes on people. Her vision is like 2 seconds ahead of everybody else's. I saw it happening. The lines are dropping, and as Minnesota continues to play well without Fish, you're going to see that number keep dropping more and more for Olivia Miles to be MVP.
So I still struggle to believe that a rookie is going to win league MVP.
It's happened before.
It's also a different league because players come in much older, right? Like Olivia Miles, I actually think is older than Victor Wembanyama. I'm just to put the league into perspective for people. That's not a shot or anything, to be very, very clear. Okay. I understand that you mentioned the passing, but this is why I am floored a bit by what's going on with Olivia. I don't think her passing is what's the story, okay? If you average 18 a game in college and then you come into the league, you should probably average, 13 a game in your rookie season, 14 a game in your rookie season. Let's make the comparison. Caitlin Clark, her last year at Iowa, averaged 31.6 points per game. This year, she is at 20.8. Olivia's just scoring at the exact same rate as she was in college, but more efficiently. And that is wild to me, that we have Olivia Miles giving us games where she has 24 points at halftime on, almost 100% shooting. And she's getting more and more comfortable. I also think landing in Minnesota has been awesome for who she is as a defensive player, because we know that that's just a very great defensive system, JY, right? And I think that's accentuated what she brings to the table as a bigger guard who can slide her feet on that side. But it is now, all of a sudden, to your point about Fee, and we've talked about this here, so I know I'm not wrong, was having a weird offseason that we thought might lead to her leaving. The Minnesota Lynx, if Nafisha Collier comes back healthy, have a very clean argument that they should be the favorites to win the championship. And they are the favorites right now. So, to me, I think it's a little bit quick just because I don't know what the whole Nafisha Collier thing's going to be. But it's not only, hey, we could be the favorites right now. It's that is, again, Coach, I'll lean on you a little bit here, but it's kind of how the Storm went from Sue to Stewie, right? And there was wins together, and it kind of, but also like there was winning before and winning after. It's like a passing of the torch, but all happening at the same time here. Like the Lynx have potentially set themselves up as the franchise kind of in this league now for a little bit.
Yeah, and that's why I'm still stunned to this day that Dallas Wings passed on Olivia Miles. She was right in their backyard. I mean, right in their backyard. There's rumors that the Wings tried to hire Mark Campbell over a year ago. So to me, it's and if you look at Olivia Miles, folks, Kevin's right. But the 3-point shooting percentage, it's only 1 percentage point. It's his overall shooting percentage from 2.
Yeah.
Because her ability to pass the ball and the floor is more stretched in the WNBA. When she gets to the basket, it's a little bit cleaner look. She's playing outstanding. She deserves credit. But the best coach in the world is not Becky Hammon. It's Cheryl Reeve. Put some respect on her name.
And I'm just going to make this point again because everyone online, they get really mad, and I don't know how many times I have to say it. AZ Fudd can go to 10 WNBA All-Star games and still be a terrible pick at first overall. Because when you go first overall in this league, the idea is not All-Star games, it's MVPs. I want to be very, very, very clear on that. And now it feels like it would be stunning if Olivia Miles does not finish top 5 in league MVP 8 times in her career. That's what it feels like. And that's not who AZ Fudd is. And I said this to people with all of the relationship stuff, okay? There was the idea that, pairing them was what was best. There was a level of risk involved that even if they truly, truly believed AZ was the best player in the class, which again was not the consensus anywhere, that if she ends up not being the best player in the class, people will say, you only made the decision based on the relationship. We'll be right back. It's Pro Basketball Today. Guys, NBA draft, closer than you think. A lot closer than you think. It's on Tuesday. And what's funny is I'm not entirely sure Washington know who they will select at first overall. The odds are holding strong on AJ Debinsa. Darren Peterson is seen as the only other guy with a shot. The Boozer number is way, way, way back. Where are you at right now, Coach, on the first overall pick battle? Or maybe I should even ask you, honestly, JY, you pick the one you feel stronger about. What should Washington do, right? What do you think Washington will do? I'm interested in whichever one you're more, invested in, if you will.
To me, when I look at the situation, what Washington should do is I think they should take AJ Debinsa. I just think he checks more boxes. I think there's no questions about the injury concerns, his ability to score off the bounce. I think he would be tremendous in regards to that three-headed monster up front with AD and Saric himself. I mean, it's 6'9", 7 foot, 7 foot. That's an extremely scary front line. I also think Debinsa is a much better defender than people get a credit for. What Washington should do is literally make people feel like they're going to take Debinsa and then pull a pivot and then trade the pick to Utah, because Utah really wants Debinsa. I mean, they really want Debinsa. And that's why I think the whole Darren Peterson not working out for anybody else besides the Wizards is almost like, I don't know if that's like a cat and mouse game to force, because maybe Peterson doesn't want to go to Utah. Then that now creates the question of, now Utah, they don't know who they're going to pick, because if Debinsa goes one, maybe they go Boozer. And then it comes to the whole thing of the whole Walker Kessler thing. Walker Kessler rejecting a contract that would have made him one of the top 10 paid centers in the NBA. Walker, how much money do you think you're worth? I mean, let's be honest. Do you think you deserve cat money? You think you deserve Joker money?
Be in Utah.
I think that's it. I think that's it. And to me, when you look at that top of the draft and you look at Utah, Utah is such a maddening situation, because it's okay, let's go through this. If Utah decides that they could keep Kessler, keep Markin, and keep Jaren Jackson Jr., then you just take Darren Peterson, put him with Keontae George, and it's your starting lineup. But every day out of Utah, you get something different. Walker Kessler doesn't want to be there. Do they want to trade Markin in, right? It's always something with Danny Ainge where he's trying to shift to another move. So Washington can really play this to their advantage. I would take Debinsa, because I think this kind of goes to the Olivia Miles thing. You just take the more sure thing when it's that close. But I could see them trying to pivot, take Peterson, but instead of taking him one, trade him and make Utah take Debinsa one.
So, to what you're getting at, my expectations as we sit here right now, and I'm not betting this yet, okay? I want to be very clear. I try and be patient with betting drafts. This is my gut feeling. Washington are trying to get Utah to come up, and Utah are going to call their bluff, and Washington are going to select Darren Peterson. And then Utah will be able to sit at 2 and get AJ just like they hoped. That's how I feel right now. And again, I know people will be like, well, then why aren't you betting Darren at 3-1? Because I'd rather bet, just call it, I'd rather bet 2 units on Darren to go first at -110 when I think it should be -300 than half a unit on Darren at 3-1 when I think it could be even money. That's how I feel. And it's just a confidence in the return. So I'm leaving it alone. That's how I feel. But interestingly enough, and I know that, not massively disagree because these guys are all good, but I still think Cam Boozer has the case to go first overall. Sometimes history tells us not to overthink a guy. List of freshmen to win the Wooden Award: Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis, Zion Williamson, Cooper Flagg, Cam Boozer. That's Hall of Famer, injury ruined his career, future Hall of Famer, Cam Boozer. That's what that list is, guys. And not like sneaking into the Hall of Fame. Kevin Durant's one of the 20 greatest players ever. Anthony Davis was one of the top 75 best players ever. And Cooper Flagg looks like he's going to be a perennial MVP candidate. And honestly, I'm still not out on Zion. I'm not. Get this guy to the right situation and I'll believe. I'm telling you, get him out of New Orleans, please. So, do you, Coach, think Boozer has a case for first overall, or just you think Dabansa is clearly the lead man for you?
Well, there's been also talk out of Washington that Anthony Davis ain't happy there either. So if you're talking about, there's the other domino that could drop at some point. So if the Anthony Davis stuff starts to pick up, then you can easily move Sarr back to the 5 and play Boozer at the 4. I want people to understand something. Boozer, okay? I almost call him Carlos. Don't worry, Carlos. Your game ain't as good as your son. Let's just keep it a buck. All right? Ready, folks? 56, 39, 79% from the free throw line, and more, ready, folks, assists per game than either Dabansa or Peterson. Think about that for a second. So this is a big man that can pass the ball, shoot the rock, score in the post. But he's not the jump out of the gym type. Well, mind you, folks, you just saw a team win the NBA championship. Now, I know, Cat's 7 feet. Elite shooting stretch big men who can't really jump out of the gym, but can score and pass the ball. So, to me, Cam Boozer's got to be in play as well. But you got to see what happens with AD. If the rumors start picking up with AD, then maybe jump in and put a unit on Boozer, because then he could make a late run for the first pick.
I saw someone compare Boozer to Alperen Şengün negatively, and I was like, oh, we lost. Alpi just had 21, 9, and 6, and Boozer is a better shooter and athlete. Guys, if you think a guy is 21, 10, and 5, he might be worth the first overall pick. We'll talk a little Giannis, LeBron as we close it out here on Pro Basketball Today. Pro Basketball Today on SportsGrid. It's Kevin Walsh and his coach, James Young. It's been great to be with you guys throughout this NBA season, and we're going to continue to be with you here for a couple of weekends as we follow the NBA draft and the NBA offseason. And the big rumor right now, coach, is once again Giannis Antetokounmpo and if/when he will be out of Milwaukee. Seemingly, this is a race between Miami and Boston. We occasionally see, Portland and Minnesota pop up in conversations here. So tell me, Coach, what your current assessment is of the Giannis situation.
Honestly, just ended already. We know he's going to get traded. Like, it just ended already. And I think what happens is we're getting towards the end, and I think Milwaukee is saying, like, whoa, Mikal Bridges got five first-round picks. We need, 9. Like, well, let's relax here. This is a guy that's got 1 year left on his deal. They lost leverage. Honestly, Kevin, they should have traded him at the end of last year, or they should have traded him at the deadline. Because if you would have traded him at the deadline, Kevin, you would have got 2 playoff runs instead of 1, right? And I thought the price would have been better. But for some reason, they decided to just keep playing with it, so I don't get it. But to me, it's going to change the landscape of the NBA. Boston, yeah, if you can get them, get them. I just think, for what? If you got to get rid of Jaylen Brown and Derek White to make this deal get done, that's too much. And if you try to keep Jaylen Brown, how much the rest? And I think that's what you have to be careful of, Kevin, right, is how much do you strip down of your team to be able to have enough to still have a competitive team? Because as soon as Giannis walks in the door, you have a 3-year window to win. That's the window. It's 3 years. It's not 6 or 7. It's 3. So you got to make sure that you send enough back to entice Milwaukee, but you can't just get rid of your whole roster because it leaves you nothing left to turn around and compete in the Eastern Conference if it's either Miami or it's Boston.
I think it's so fascinating that the two teams that seemingly Giannis, I don't know if it's Giannis is in between. I don't know who is in between, but the two landing spots currently plus 550, 45 to 1. Giannis is either going to be on maybe the title favorite or a mid-range Eastern Conference contender. Now, I actually think if he ends up in Miami, I will be higher than the market on that team because I think him plus Bam probably will just automatically give them a top 5 defense. And with Spoelstra, let the chips kind of fall where they may type of thing. That's my early thought on the idea that he could end up there. If he ends up in Boston, I don't know if I'll be higher than the market on them, but I'll agree with the market. Because to me, Giannis and Tatum is a fantastic duo. I've had people telling me, Giannis doesn't shoot threes, all Boston does is shoot threes. How does that work? And I'm like, exactly how you just said it works. They balance one another out. I think it would be really, really nice. Just quickly, Coach, before we get out of here, the LeBron situation, who knows when it'll be resolved. But, man, a lot of the reporting makes it seem like this is already down to just the Lakers and the Warriors. What's your assessment on this?
Yeah, it makes sense to stay out in the West Coast to try and see what you can do with the Lakers, but it's all about who else you could bring in. And same thing with Golden State. Is it a sign and trade? Is it a street signing? Street signings don't have to take much less money. And here's the thing. In the East, it's very competitive, and I would say this. If the Knicks did not win the finals, then I think there would have been a pathway to New York. But now New York has got the title. I think that pulls them out of the mix because I just think they just run it back. So it's probably out in the West, and for LeBron, he tries to make one more run at a title.
I am very disappointed. I am very disappointed.
You want him on the Knicks? Did you want him on the Knicks?
Yeah, but
I would have got you a jersey too.
Once the Knicks ended up winning the title.
I know, but it would have been nice. It would have been nice. I'm not trying to interrupt. It would have been nice to see K-Dub in New York. Go, New York, go, New York, go. I mean, it would. If LeBron call it New York Knicks today. Like, it would have been done. We would have shut the thing down for an entire year. I just want to go out there and say that.
I agree. And instead, the Knicks winning a title robbed that from us. So pretty selfish. Not enough people are talking about it. I don't want LeBron back on the Lakers, but I really don't want LeBron on the Warriors. So I don't know, man. I'm not very excited by the options on the table. And it's remarkable to me that the Cleveland option is somehow not on the table. We will see you all back here next week on Pro Basketball Today following the NBA draft. For Coach James Young, I'm Kevin Walsh. We'll see you then.